Hi, this is Brian AG with AG Race Timing. Welcome to this two-part training series. In this video, we're going to focus on the essential hardware needed for a complete timing system, the minimum recommended specs for your laptop or your PC, and what settings within Windows you should change to help ensure no headaches on race day. You can use the timestamps below to jump directly to any particular topic. In part 2, we'll focus on the timing software, which is really the heart of the business, and I'd argue the most important part of any timing system. Because if the software doesn't do what you need, if it's unreliable, or if it takes 2 months to learn how to use or to train someone else how to use, then it's probably not the best choice for most timers. This is a 100% open hardware system, so you're free to buy any of the hardware, including the tags, from anywhere you want. However, I quickly discovered that most people would rather make one payment and receive everything, so we do offer the hardware as a convenience. So the first piece of equipment we're going to look at is probably something you already have, which is a laptop. And if you don't already have a laptop, we're going to cover where I purchase my laptops from and what specs and what things do I look for when I buy one. And so first, before we dig into that though, let's talk about the settings I change inside Windows to help make sure that there's less likely of a chance that anything goes wrong on race day. And so if you go to Control Panel, which you can go down here to the search bar and just type in Control, and then that should pop it up. And then once you pop up Control Panel, if it doesn't show the small icons, you can swap it from Category View over to Small Icons or whatever here, and go to Power Options. Inside Power Options, you're going to see your different power plans are available. Usually it's just one, and so what you want to do is go to Change Plan Settings, whichever ones are default, that's in bold there. And then you're going to change all these to say never put the computer to sleep or never turn the display off. You don't want to be sitting there timing the race and the system doing what it's supposed to be doing, and you can just sit back and watch and observe, make sure everything's going well, and all of a sudden the computer goes to sleep simply because you didn't move the mouse. And so you want to make sure that the computer doesn't go to sleep or dim the display. And then the second thing I do, if we go back to power options, is I make it to where closing the lid doesn't do anything. So you see this option here. And so you want to make sure that, let's say some crazy scenario happens and the wind blows something over and it closes your lid on your laptop. Then you don't want that to shut the entire race down. And so you want to make it to where closing the lid doesn't do anything. And one thing to keep in mind if you make this change here, though, is if you're used to simply closing your lid and putting your laptop away and everything being fine, well, you have to remember from now on, if you change this setting, you've got to go to manually sleep or hibernate your laptop every time you want to pack it away or shut it down, of course. Um, and so that's just one thing to remember. But the nice thing about having this setting on is not only is that, more peace of mind on race day, but also if you use this laptop as a read zone on the course or somewhere, where you want to put this laptop inside of a timing box or some tub where it's, protected, then you can actually close the lid and everything's still working fine. And what you'll find is a laptop that might have a standard 2 or 3 hour battery. Well, it can still accept reads and do everything just fine, but with the lid closed, it's not powering the screen anymore, and your laptop will last, 10, 12 hours or more. And so it makes it a much more reliable reader or a laptop to use out on the course too. So that's the two settings I changed here. The other thing that I do is if you have any kind of, and I may be saying the name of this company wrong, but McAfee or whatever, if you have any kind of McAfee antivirus or live scan web browsing tools, I would uninstall any of those because I found that that product can actually block access to your reader. And so you want to make sure that there's no antiviruses that could either decide, hey, mid-race, I'm going to download some update and restart your computer, or I'm going to decide to just stop accepting reads from this external unit, this reader or whatever. And so for me, your timing laptops, most people's timing computers, they don't use it for everyday web browsing, just searching the web. And even if you do, if you go to the same websites over and over again, you're just fine. I've never had a virus. I've never worried about it. And so you want as few things on your laptop as possible that could get in the way. So that's kind of the three things that I do on every timing laptop I own. The next thing let's cover is what if you need to purchase a new laptop and what specs do you want to look for? And so let's go ahead and pull up, in fact, it's probably in my search history. I usually purchase my laptops from DellRefurbished.com. If you go to the root page there, you'll see that they almost always have a 45 or 50% off coupon, and that's on top of the price you see here. And so if they're running 40% off this, then in the cart you can type in whatever promo code they show. And I'm usually purchasing my laptops for between $200 and $300. And so some people might think, oh, you're using this refurbished, cheap stuff, and that's what you're running your business from. Well, the reality is, number one, we've probably purchased 40 or 50 of these laptops, and I can maybe point out one or two that started having some weird things where the screen would flicker or something. But the laptops have been just fine. And I think if I were to purchase 40 or 50 brand new laptops from anywhere, I would have one or two that have an issue. Um, but the main reason why I try to find laptops for this price is because, we're using these laptops, we're carrying them around all over the place, or, constantly being stored, packed away, unpacked, used out in maybe rain conditions where I'm trying to protect it with a tent or whatever. And so obviously we also have laptops that are out on the course sometimes. And so what if they get stolen? And so I don't want to purchase a laptop that is, and I love Lenovo and I love other, higher brand laptops, for development at my office job or here at home. Obviously, I use stronger laptops, but for my main timing laptops, or at laptops for backup timing, or some of the other luxury features, results kiosk and other things, I want to get the best value that I can, and that's why I purchase from here. And so what I look for is I look for a laptop that has a built-in HDMI port and built-in Ethernet port. A lot of super slim, expensive laptops nowadays, they try to get you to get into like what's it called, a Thunderbolt port or whatever, and they want you to buy a docking station that goes with it, and the docking station is what's got actually all the ports you would need. And so for me, I prefer a traditional laptop that's got all the ports built in. And so, because if you use like a USB to Ethernet adapter, that USB can easily slide right out if someone moves something on the timing table or whatever. So I like the security of a snap-in connection that's fixed on the reader and on the laptop. And so that's how the laptop communicates with the readers, through the HDMI, or sorry, the Ethernet port. And so so you want a built-in Ethernet port, you want an HDMI port in case you want to hook up a TV to your laptop to show either the tag check feature or results key. There's lots of different features in the software with kind of public-facing info, and so you can hook it up with a HDMI. That's standard connection there. Of course, every laptop's going to have some kind of display port, but it's nice to have a traditional HDMI port. And then I like to have two USB ports at least. If the laptop has more than two, great, but I want to have at least two. One for hooking up my printer. That way I can print results during the race or right after the race. And then another USB port that I hook up to my camera. So the software, as you might already know, it can automatically trigger DSLR cameras like Canon and Nikon and some other brands. And so if I have two USB ports, that allows me to do that. Now, if there's a third USB port, great. That's just something else I can use to either charge my phone or plug in a jump drive, or something else. And so, but that's kind of minimum specs when it comes to the ports I look for. Do you want to have at least a 14-inch screen? I find 14-inch screens are just fine. I don't want to go below 14-inch. So if you get 15 or 16, good for you, that's fine. But 14 seems to be, easily portable. I can see it just fine, and they've been working good. But as for the internal components, the specs, I do like to get from a main timing computer at least 16 gigs of RAM. I don't know if they make laptops anymore without an SSD drive. But you definitely want an SSD over a traditional hard drive, less likely for any kind of locking up of the hard drive, whatever. You also want to get at least a quad core processor, the 4 cores. Most laptops are going to have more than 16 gigs of RAM, more than 4 cores. This is simply the minimum specs at which I've seen. If you've got at least 4 cores and you got at least 16 gigs of RAM, then you can hammer the system with, thousands of runners going through a starting line, and I have not seen any hesitation at all. And so, again, if you've got only 8 gigs of RAM, or if you've only got a dual core processor, you're probably going to be just fine. You might see some situations if you're timing a really big race where the software could kind of lag. It should, pick up and process everything fine, but for a main timing laptop, the minimums I try to go for is quad core, 16 gigs of RAM. And so let's say you find a few different laptops that have all these specs. Then the next thing I try to look for is I do prefer like a backlit keyboard. So if you see one that's got a backlit keyboard and the other one doesn't, that way if you're timing at nighttime, you can easily turn that on and see all your keys and do things pretty easy. Um, but let's say you got 2 or 3 laptops and both of them have backlit keyboards. Well, then the next thing I look for is, okay, what's the highest resolution screen between the 2 options or 3 options I'm looking at? And so you want to kind of get one that's got a higher resolution screen, just makes things not so magnified on the screen. But that's kind of what I look for in laptops. So I hope that helps you out. Now let's look at the RFID equipment you're going to need to have a complete timing system. So let's jump back over to my website. If we scroll down, you'll see that the software works with many different brands of readers, Pinge, Alien, Zebra, Think Magic, a bunch of brands that you've probably heard of. But the best value, the easiest equipment to support and to source, and also has proven to work very well, is the FX series reader from either Motorola or Zebra. Zebra bought out Motorola's RFID division many years ago. That's why you might see it listed under either one of those brands. But the older Motorola FX7400, that one you can easily find on eBay. For example, if I go here now and do that, this is something you can find RFID FX, usually for less than $100, or definitely well under half the price of a brand new reader. Everything we provide, if you were to buy it from us, we don't buy from eBay or anywhere. We buy directly from Zebra, so it's full MSRP with full warranties. And the reason why we do that is because we're a software company. I only offer the hardware as a convenience because I found pretty quick that most people want to write one check and be done with it. Obviously, if you're a cross-country coach, then your school doesn't want to get used equipment that is found from random places. They want brand new equipment. And so I understand that. And so everything we provide is brand new, but with this system, it's a 100% open hardware system. You're free to buy anything from anywhere you want. And so a lot of timers will reach out to me saying, hey, what's the cheapest I can get started? Kind of get my toe in the water, or maybe just kind of to test the system out. And then I'll expand or buy new equipment as my business grows. And so I get that. And so this system, a lot of my timers start off by buying equipment from eBay. And so I don't know the percentage. I would say most people just buy brand new from us because they don't want to worry about anything going wrong. But the reality is these readers, there's no moving components in them. It's almost like a jump drive, right? If it works on day one, it should work on day 1,000 just the same. But so it's kind of a mix of people. I would say the vast majority buy brand new. But there is a good number of people that say, hey, if I can find a reader on eBay for $75 like this one, and it's a 100% or a very highly rated seller, and the listing shows that it's a good reader, which this one does, and this is a 4-port model, by the way, so that's what you want. If all the things look good, and if I buy with a credit card, and also they offer a 30-day return policy, why not, right? Get it in. If there's any problems, you can dispute the charge, or get a refund from them some way. And so this is a good way to get your toe in the water. This is also a good way if you're looking at, what if I needed multiple read zones, some on the course or whatever. Well, for me, if I'm going to set read zones on the course, then I'm going to go with a cheap reader that if someone were to steal it or something get damaged, it's not going to kill me, right? So like a $75 reader and maybe a $200 or $300 laptop and a couple other, antennas or whatever. If someone were to steal all that, it would stink, but it's not going to ruin me. It's not going to take away, a whole month or more of profit from timing races or whatever else I'm doing. So that's why this is an attractive option for a lot of people. So just want you to know that's available here. Again, you can search for other models if you want. And for me, what I usually tell people is if you can save less than half the cost of the reader, then it's worth considering. But if you get above, if you can't find anything that's at least over 50% off, you might as well buy brand new. And so if you look at the packages we have here, we don't have a box that has FX 7500 or 9600 on it that we ship out. We created these packages simply as a guide to show here's what all is needed for a complete system, here's how it all hooks up, and here's what the prices for each thing would be if you purchase them from us. So each one of these is if you already had, for example, an Ethernet cord, if you already had a UPS battery backup, or if you found a reader online that you want to buy yourself, which, by the way, if you find something online, feel free to send it to me because I don't want you to buy something that is going to make the software look bad or make the system look bad. And if you find something that's going to work good, I want to tell you, hey man, jump on that, good find, and then you can get the rest from us or wherever you want. So again, we're a software company. I just want to make sure that you get equipment that's not going to cause either one of us headaches. Because if you buy, let's say you decide to try to buy your own cables, and you don't buy the low loss special cable that's needed for RFID. Well, if you start having really bad performance, and I don't know where you got some of your equipment from, then I could spend a lot of time troubleshooting each individual piece, and it could be a headache for both of us. And so I'm going to tell you what's safe, what's not safe. So feel free to run things by me, and I'm happy to help. So let's talk about the actual components. Like I said, on our packages here, we do list two main readers. You got the FX 9600 and the FX 7500. The 7500, if you look over at it, is more of a retail class reader. It's designed to look pretty. Now, it's still strong enough to work very well for race timing, but it can only support 4 antennas. And so that is really 4 antennas is plenty for most races if you use panel antennas like this. Now, a half mat like you see down here, and I call it a half mat because by default, RaceResult and Blackbox timing and some of the other mats out there are like 16 feet or more. And for most races, that is too big because a lot of finish line arches or uh, big metal structures or whatever are only 8 or 10 feet wide or maybe 12 tops. And so they design their systems, of course, and they have great equipment, by the way. I have a lot of respect for MyLabs, RaceResult, a lot of their great systems out there. But they're designing their systems for the big, tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people coming through a finish line. So, their equipment is large, it's expensive. And so what I found is that in fact, they only sell. I think we're the only ones that sell a half mat, and so we can sell a half mat from them, and you can buy it either from us or if you were to go to them and they would sell you a half mat, then you can buy it from them. It doesn't matter either way. If you buy it from us, it's the same price as buying it from them. And if you buy it from us, obviously we make a little bit of kickback as a thank you for being kind of the middleman. It's no extra cost to you, but it's them that, they fill the order, they ship it to you, and you get the same warranty. It's the same thing as if you were to buy it from them. And so that is an option if you want to do that. But these half mats use up 4 antenna ports. And so if you have a FX7500 reader, you can use the mat, but I personally don't feel comfortable having one read zone, and that's it. And so the panel antennas have a wide coverage area, and what you'll find with most other timing systems out there, I believe they use a mat plus at least 1 or 2 panels on the side, just because it's an extra read angle, so you're reading from the side and from below. And the panel antennas, they just perform better. You'll find that if you lay down a mat and only a mat, and then you also have another system with just 4 antennas, the 4 antennas are going to far outperform the mat because again, it's just multiple read zones, much wider read areas, and so they have many more chances to pick up the tags. Plus, and there's many types of races that the panel antennas can time that a mat antenna can't. And so if you're timing like an inline skating race or a one-wheel race, or if you're timing a road cycling race where these guys are coming by at 20 miles an hour or more, then you really don't want those guys flying over a mat. And so the panel antennas, it's easy to position your antennas more accurately to get better reads. Again, much wider read zone, and you can have multiple read zones as people go through the finish line chute. And so obviously what I usually do is I'll put 2 panel antennas right on the finish line, and of course, over the past few years, I do have a mat now, so I'll put the mat down plus a panel antenna on each side. And I usually put the panel antennas about a foot or two behind the mat so that the mat's kind of the primary read zone, but the panels are overlapping enough to where they're all 3 right there at the finish line doing a good job. And then I'll put extra antennas past the finish line, and that way if somehow someone is missed, then you still have additional chances to pick them up. And the reality is, if I put panels 7 feet, maybe 8 feet down from the finish line, and someone's running through, that's still about a quarter second difference between the finish line and that last read zone they're going to cross through. So very little difference that anyone would notice if someone does somehow get missed right at the finish line and is picked up a few feet later. And so that's a lot of rambling here, but I hope that helps understand kind of the thought process behind most timers going with a mat antenna plus at least 1 or 2 panels. Or if you're just starting off and because mat antennas unfortunately are not cheap. A panel antenna, if you scroll down here, you'll see is about $150 each or so. Plus you got the cables and whatever. So they're not super cheap either, but they're definitely cheaper than a mat antenna. And so a lot of timers will start off by buying a reader, maybe from eBay or whatever else, and basically just a couple panels so they can get through a lot of small to medium-sized races. And then as their business grows, they'll add more stuff as needed. But I will say of the 2 systems, it's probably a 10-to-1 ratio that most people go with the FX9600 reader. It is a rugged class reader. It's only $500 more, and that gives you kind of twice the capability. It has 8 antenna ports instead of 4, and so that's what allows you to hook up a mat antenna plus extra panels because you have the extra ports to do it. Now, if you had a FX7500 reader, which has only got 4 ports, and you wanted to hook up a mat plus a panel, usually what I'll tell people is simply leave antenna segment 1, this one right here, disconnect it from the reader, and instead use a panel antenna on the side. And the reason why is because if you put your panel antenna right next to the mat, well, the panel antenna is actually reading over that section anyway. Plus, it's reading all the way across the mat and is providing a wider read zone. And so you could use the FX7500 with a mat antenna. I would just leave this antenna segment detached, so that way you get kind of the best of both worlds again. We got a side, different angle, plus a wider zone, and you're using panels on the mat. But most people, though, the best thing is to go with the FX9600, and then you get the option to do everything you want. And so, but again, these packages are designed to show you how everything hooks up. So you got an Ethernet cord going from the laptop to the reader. You got antenna cables going from the reader to the antennas. And then, of course, you got to put the antenna on something in order to pick up runners when they cross. So the cheapest, most compact, easiest way to do that is to use simple tripods like this. Now, you do want to use a heavier duty tripod than some of the $15 or $20 tripods are not going to hold, because these are flat, that could catch wind. So you want to use a heavier duty professional tripod, and that ones where you can spread the legs pretty far. And then also these have a hook at which you can hang a weight if you need to. I hardly ever need to do that, but there is that option if you do find that you're timing in scenario where there's like 30-mile-an-hour winds. And so anyways, that's kind of how things hook up. The other thing you're going to want is a UPS battery backup. You definitely don't want to plug the reader, because the reader has no battery built into it, so it's just like a desktop computer. If it loses power, it has to go through a whole reboot cycle, and if you're timing a race, that 1 minute reboot cycle feels like an absolute eternity. And so you want to hook your reader up to a UPS battery backup, and that way it provides clean, constant power no matter what happens outside of your finish line. Um, and the good news is the reader uses so little power that a UPS battery backup, even a pretty inexpensive one, can keep the reader going for a couple hours at least. And so that gives you plenty of time to figure out, hey, I lost power, what's going on, and it not shut the race down. And you may even get through many races using just that. Now, you don't really want to do that, but it's nice that it can. Something else that's important about the battery backup is you never want to plug your printer into the battery backup, especially if it's a laser printer. Those can demand so much power at one time when you fire off a print job that it can shut or short out the battery backup and shut your reader off. And so that's something else you want to know is I try to keep it to where nothing else is plugged into the battery backup except for my reader. And if you do need to plug up laptops or something else, try to plug it into the surge side if it's got, like a laptop's got its own battery, or if you do have something that for some reason has to have a battery supply, hopefully it's a low power item that doesn't demand a bunch at one time. But you really want all of the battery to go to powering the reader compared to anything else. But the main rule of thumb to follow is never plug your printer into the battery backup. So let's scroll on down and look at the actual components. By default, this package only includes 4 antennas because for most races, 4 antennas is plenty. It's very rare that I ever have to hook up more than 4 antennas to my reader. Again, think about 2 being right on the finish line, and you have 2 extra that you can spread down through the chute to make extra read zones. And so very rare that I need more than 4. And so that's why the package only includes 4. And again, all of this is 100% customizable. You can tell us to leave off or to add on anything you want here. So that is kind of a quick rundown of the reader plus all the components that you're going to need. Down below in the description, I will put a video link to the 2 different mat antennas that are offered. Again, RaceResult has the patent on foldable mat antennas, so legally there's only 2 that can be purchased and used. And so I'll give you my opinion on which one I prefer of those 2. Both of them great. You can't go wrong with either one of them, but I do have a preference of the 2 when it comes to me and my crews and what we use. But the other last thing I'll say about this equipment you see on the list here is, again, feel free to buy the readers anywhere you want. Those you can save quite a bit of money. In fact, the most savings would be through the reader. And the rest of the equipment that you see, the antennas and the cables and the brackets and all that stuff, the tripods, those are the lower cost items where there's a lot of variables in play. So for example, the antennas, you've got different connector types on the back. You've got different ratings and DBIs measurements and all kinds of, linear versus circular. And there's lots of different ways that are really difficult for people to figure out. And even how to mount the antenna onto the tripod. That's something that took us quite a while to figure out. And so it's best, and there's not much cost savings to buy those items yourself. So it's usually best just to buy those things from us. That way, it's all going to hook up. You get the right stuff. It's all going to work well. And so that's kind of what if you do want to buy the reader yourself somewhere, then unless you're an RFID expert or if you've done a lot of research, you kind of know what you're getting into already, then the simple, safe way to go, and also still inexpensive, buy the reader yourself if you want, and then buy the rest from us. Or like probably most people do, they just buy everything from us. But I just want you to know that's the way the safest thing to do there. So the final consideration to have a complete timing system is the type of RFID tag that the participants are going to wear. So most timing systems push bib tags, which is an adhesive RFID tag that goes in the back of the bib, and a lot of them will put foam in the back of the bib, and that's because when the tag is on the back of the bib, that puts the tag in basically the worst condition. It breaks every rule of using UHF RFID, and so that's why you kind of have to use a more expensive or specialized tag if it's going to go in the back of the bib, like a dog bone, or there's a few others now. And so, when the runner sweats, where does all the water and sweat go? Straight down their front of their shirt or straight down their back. And plus, you're placing the tag on the thickest part of the body. Well, for a lot of people, the thickest part of the body, the wettest part of the body, and you're having to read at a bad angle when the tag is coming by the antennas. And so, um, when I first built the system, I assumed I was going to use bib tags, but it didn't take very much testing to realize that I could sometimes run through the finish line, and it was very rare, but it would happen that I could run through the finish line and all of my antennas miss me, and that always bothered me because what I found is I can flick a tag in front of an antenna or even put it on something and go by like I had my neighbor on a motocross bike going by like at 40 or 50 miles an hour, and it would never miss him because the tag was actually facing the antenna when it came by. However, whenever a tag is on the bib, then it's actually facing away from the antennas, and again, all the sweat or the bad angle or whatever else. And plus, if you're you know a near 7 foot tall man or a 7-year-old girl, the tags are going to be in two widely different locations. And so I discovered that if I could place a tag somewhere on their lower body, somewhere either the chips on the hips or on the side of the shorts or on the shoe, then that comes across at the exact same angle, same height for everybody, comes across directly facing the antenna. It's also on the drier part of the body. And so I discovered that that was reliably producing 100% read rates, and that would allow me to have the participant return the tag, and I can reuse them for all future races. And so, so that seemed to be the best solution. So I'm going to show you what our tag looks like, but I will say that the other tag I use is the Hue tag, HUTAG. That is a great tag, the best tag to use if you're going to time triathlons, mud runs, adventure races, stuff like that. But for my running races, I use our reusable all-weather laminated tags that you see here. So I'm going to pull up a picture so you can see what that looks like. Here is a close-up view of our all-weather reusable tag. You can have the participants untie their shoe, slide it down their shoelace, and tie the shoe back so that it hangs off the side of the shoe. Or you can have them pin it to the side of the shorts, or what we call chips on the hips. This is simply a laminated RFID inlay with a white reinforcement ring at the top as a visual clue of where the shoelace or the safety pin goes to wear the tag. I didn't patent this design on purpose, so people are free to make them themselves if they want, but it is a very tedious process, so most people just buy them pre-made from us. My crews and I typically do chips on the hips for road races, and we do chips on the shoes for cross-country races. Of course, the vast majority of races we time are road races. We do probably 15 or 20 cross-country races a year and 60 to 80 road races a year. When the chips are worn on the side of the shorts, they come back looking brand new every time because they are not cinched down on the shoelace or anything. And so they're also easy for people to reach down and attach them before the race and reach down to detach them and return them after the race. For cross-country races, we typically do chips on the shoes because racing singlets can get saturated with sweat and water, and the racing singlet can also be longer than the shorts. And so the shorts are usually very short in cross-country races, and so if they have a saturated singlet, that could cover the tag, and UHF RFID cannot read through water very well, and that's any UHF RFID system. Additionally, with cross country, placing is more important than time, and so the lower the tag is or the closer it passes to the antenna. So if you're timing a cross country race and you have a mat antenna plus the tag is on the shoe, then you're less likely to pick up any reads a foot or two before the finish line, and it's more likely to get runners in the right order. Either method, though, chips on the shoes or on the hips, will outperform bib tags typically in almost every situation because the tags come across directly facing the antenna and the tags are located on a skinnier and drier part of the body. One of the reservations people might have about reusable tags is they have the idea of back in the old days of like the championship tag or something like that where you have to cut the tag off or try to get it back right when people finish. And I always hated that as a runner. And so I always keep my finish line wide open, let people go, run on through, go cool down, throw up, whatever they need to do. And then I simply ask the runners to return the tags before they leave the event. And when I tell them, of course, it keeps the cost down for everyone, keeps them out of the landfill. They're always happy to do that. We simply make an announcement when we're passing the bibs out. We make sure they know how to wear the tags and how to return them. And then during any pre-race announcements, right before the race starts, we might mention it again. And then during their award ceremony, we'll also remind them that we want to get those tags back, and people are happy to comply. But these tags are inexpensive enough that if you did lose or have a few damage throughout the year, it's not gonna make or break you to buy a handful to replace them to get ready for the next year. So that concludes part 1 of this training series. In the next video, we'll cover how to use the software.